Hi everyone, my name is Nikki. Welcome to Alma Pura Awakenings. I'm a spiritualist medium and I've been connecting with people for about the last 30 years or so to share spiritual teachings that I receive in my journey with God and an array of other spiritual services that I offer, along with connecting people to their friends and family in heaven. And today I am so excited to share with you a spiritual teaching that I received that came into my heart over this weekend. And I've been kind of working on this one for a little while, but everything kind of came to clarity this weekend. And I am just so excited to share that with you. I'm going to be doing that in just a moment. Just want to share a few things with you. If you are interested in any of the spiritual work that I do, I encourage you to visit my website at almapura.com or my Facebook page at Alma Pura. You can also reach out to me via text message or email or Facebook message, and I really look forward to connecting with each one of you. I hope you spend some time with me this afternoon as we go through our topic of conversation today. I really love connecting with people and I love sharing the things that I learn, and I really hope that you find some benefit in today. I hope you stick it out through the video and that you reply on the bottom with any comments that you have or any questions that you have, which I would love to address. I love to engage with everyone. I would like to share what the topic of today is, and it's called Breaking Anger. It's a choice. I have some notes here on the side that I'm going to be referring to because I do want to stay on track today. I don't want to kind of go off on a tangent, and so I sat down in prayer today and have been working on this presentation to be able to share with you all. So I hope it comes into your heart as much as it came into my heart. The other day, well, last week sometime, I had shared a video with everybody describing how to get through the difficulties of fear and anxiety. And in response to that video, I don't know if you saw it. If you haven't, please visit it on my Facebook page. I think it's a really wealthy piece of information that can really help us through this time that we're going through during the pandemic, and also during our life just in general. So I shared this video last week, and in response to the video, a client friend sent me an email and said, you know, I'm really not fearful and I'm really not anxious about the pandemic. And she shared with me that she was angry, and that she was angry that, you know, people have lost their jobs and small businesses have closed, and she's just angry. And so one of the questions in her email was, do I have any guidance about anger? And I have to have full disclosure here. I am a person who has struggled with anger during my life, and I can go from 0 to 60 and kind of just get angry. And so that is one of the things that in my life I have really tried to pay attention to, and tried to, you know, squash anger when it comes into my heart or into my expression or into my behaviors. So I told her that I would make a video on it. And when I did, I sat down to do the outline and to say the things I wanted to say about anger, and try to acknowledge that anger is truly a choice. And I wanted to figure out, how can we get from a knee-jerk reaction of anger into an understanding of where it is a choice and where it becomes a choice. So I prayed about it as I was doing my outline, and I got it all settled, and then I was speaking to my daughter about it and sharing with her what I intended to share in the video. And she says, well, Mom, you know, kind of like, you get that way. And it kind of crushed me a little bit, because I realized that I was going to teach you a concept that I didn't have a full mastery of. And thank goodness for my daughter, who always is so willing to share the truth with me, even if it hurts. So I love you, Britt. But it really did help me so much that she caused me to take a step back and reflect. So although I was going to make the video last week, I couldn't make it last week because I was still struggling myself and understanding the concepts of anger. And so I took some time this weekend to reflect and to pray, and actually God brought some experiences into my life that really put anger into perspective and really helped me to focus on it and pay attention to it. So I'm just going to go over a few things that I wanted to share about anger and express to you what happens based on that request from my friend who wanted me to share some guidance on anger. So we're going to approach this in a few different ways. This video shouldn't take too long, and hopefully my notes here will help me stay on track. So there's a few things I wanted to discuss about the emotion of anger. And first of all, the question becomes to us, what is it that happens when we are angry? How can we break anger if we don't even really know what happens? We say we get angry because of a particular reason, but at the base of anger, it's really like a loss of control. We can't control a situation, we can't control a particular experience. So before we get anger in us, we're actually rendered kind of into a powerless state. So at the time that we're in a powerless state, like the pandemic, we come to a place where we feel like things are out of our control. So it's out of my control. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't change people's minds. What am I supposed to do about it? How am I supposed to make things better? And that might be, if we're using the pandemic as a common experience, why people might be feeling anger right now. Although there are a lot of experiences in our life that could trigger us to feel a level of anger. And so this isn't just specifically about the pandemic. It's just that the pandemic creates a good common experience that we can all kind of tap into to derive some of the triggered emotions that we have felt through the course of our life. So this is just one experience, the pandemic being one experience that may draw anger into us. So using that as our example today, many of us feel like this is out of our control. We're not the scientists, we're not the doctors, how can we do anything about it? And so when we're angry, we lose a sense of power, or we feel powerless, and we kind of step back from recognizing that, because there's nothing we can do personally to change this. And so after a little while of living in that experience that we don't have control over, that we have no power to change, we start to arrive at an understanding that like something has been done to us, and it gets personal. So at the beginning of this pandemic, one of the things that we did, most of us could handle this pretty well for a couple weeks. Like we were able to hang in there, and everybody enjoyed the first couple weeks of vacation, home in your house with your kids, no responsibilities. You don't have to run out to work. You don't have to run out to the store. A lot of people stockpiled. A lot of people got prepared for those first couple weeks. So at the beginning, we did feel a sense of power. We did feel like we could handle this. So maybe we bought extra groceries or extra toilet paper, or maybe we got extra wipes. And so at some part of us, at the beginning of this common situation that we're all experiencing, we did feel a sense of control, a little bit. And in that sense of control, we even enjoyed the first couple weeks home. But after that first couple weeks, when it wasn't so fun anymore, when we started to get a little bit bored, or when we started running out of money, or when we couldn't go to the store, we couldn't go to our favorite restaurant, now is where we start to lose that sense of power that we thought we had. And that's where the situation of the pandemic becomes personal, not collective. At the beginning, it was collective, and at the beginning, everybody could handle it for a couple weeks because it wasn't so personal. But when it became personal to us, that's when we started to experience that sense of a loss of control and that inability, that powerlessness. And when that happened, it became personal. So now that it's personal, now we believe that something has been done to us. Once we believe or talk ourselves or find ourselves in a perspective that we think that something's been done to us, at that point is when we release all responsibility to the current situation. So that's when we say, this isn't my fault, something was done to me. And in that transition, now we begin to blame other people. So anger is a loss of power. Something in that loss of power makes the situation become personal. When the situation becomes personal, we wash our hands of responsibility. It's not our fault, you're doing this to me. this is what you're doing to me, or this is what this situation is doing, or this is what the governor did, or this is what the scientist did, or this is what the president did, or the Democrats or the Republicans. We have somebody else to blame. So now that we blame somebody else and we've washed our hands of all responsibility of this situation, what happens now? Now that we blame, we've risen ourselves above other people because it's personal, because it's affecting us. Maybe a family member contracted COVID-19. Maybe somebody in our life is struggling because of that virus. Maybe it's become personal now because our small businesses are not making the money to take care of their families. Maybe the restaurant chains are closing. So whatever your personal situation is, think about it. At the beginning, you came in okay, and you came in as the collective, and you got prepared, and you enjoyed the first couple weeks potentially. But then it became personal. Then you left responsibility on the side. We all did this. And then we start to blame other people. And then when we blame other people, it makes us the judge and the jury. And if we think about that, we become the judge and the jury. Who made us king? And this is where we transition at this point of the teaching as to, once we become the judge and the jury, we ask ourselves who made us king. And this is where we start to find the answer to how to break the anger, how to get outside of the anger, how to step above it and kind of look down on it and see what it is actually doing to us. So I would like to share with you a story that I came upon when I asked myself, well, who made us king? Who made us the judge and jury? I see how I became the judge and the jury. I lost power. It became personal. Something was done to me. I can't believe the world did this to me, or he or she did this to me. It's not my fault. I'm releasing responsibility. This isn't my fault. And now I'm judging. So that's where I sat when I started to do this reflection on anger, and I got about this far, and I literally did sit down and pray. And I was like, I'm the judge. Who made me king? Who made us the boss? So what I did is, in my prayer, I got a prompting to look at the book of Matthew, and to look at the book of Matthew and king. So I said Matthew king is what I Googled, and I Googled that, and what came up was actually really beautiful, because it reminded me that Jesus is the only real king. So I'm going to read this to you. It's only about 14 verses, and then we're going to cover how we fix anger based on an understanding that comes from this parable that Jesus taught. So here's the parable. It's Matthew 25, chapter 25, verses 31 through 46, and it says, Jesus will judge the world. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels are with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. The people of every nation will be gathered in front of him. He will separate them as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right, but the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, Come, my Father has blessed you. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you took me into your home. I needed clothes, and you gave me something to wear. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the people who have God's approval will reply to him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and take you into our homes, or see you in need of clothes and give you something to wear? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? The king will answer them, I guarantee this truth. Whatever you did for one of my brothers or sisters, no matter how unimportant they seemed, you did for me. Then the king will say to those on his left, Get away from me, God has cursed you. Go into the everlasting fire that was prepared for the devil and his angels. I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't take me into your homes. I needed clothes, and you didn't give me anything to wear. I was sick and in prison, and you didn't take care of me. They too will ask the Lord, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or as a stranger or need in clothes, or sick in a prison, and didn't help you? And he will answer them, I guarantee this truth. Whatever you failed to do for one of my brothers or sisters, no matter how unimportant they seemed, you failed to do for me. These people will go away into the eternal punishment, but those with God's approval will go into eternal life. Wow. That tells me something. When I read this and I completed this and I read this part of Matthew, a question came to me. And the question was, well, how do I perceive the world? What is it, when I look at the world, what do I see? Do I see heaven on earth, or do I see hell on earth? And if we look at that last verse of Matthew, it says, these people will go away into eternal punishment, but those with God's approval will go into eternal life. And so when I read this verse, I'm really reading this from the perspective of humanity. When we read the Bible, we should really read it from each part of who we are. And as I've discussed in some of my other videos, we are a trinity. We're a human self, we are a spirit self like God, and we are a healing self like the Holy Spirit. So from this perspective, I'm living on the world, I'm going through this experience, we collectively are going through this experience. So when I read this last part, I read it from the perspective of humanity. And so if I do that, this verse reminds me that I made choices. The parable tells us that people made choices. They fed their neighbor. They gave their neighbor clothes. They loved their neighbor. They were kind to their neighbor. And Jesus was trying to express that in that act of kindness, in that act of generosity that they were doing for somebody random, some stranger, that in all reality, that he, Jesus Christ, is the one that received that love, that he, Jesus Christ, is the one that received those clothes, that when they did that for their neighbor, they actually did it for Christ. And that's what he was trying to express. So I realized that this story teaches us about making choices, about looking at the world in a collective fashion, about seeing our neighbor, about recognizing when they have no clothes, or when they have no food, or when they have something less than we have. And it created in me an understanding that I can have heaven on earth, and that's a choice, or I can have hell on earth, and that's a choice. And right now, a lot of people are experiencing hell on earth. So the question is, what are you experiencing? And what have you chosen? Because this is truly the pinnacle understanding of where anger sits. Anger makes us a judge and a jury. Anger says we're not part of everything. Anger says it's your fault, not my fault, not our fault. And this story just awakened me so much to an understanding that the experience that we are all currently having right now as a collective experience is affecting each one of us very individually. And some of us are in fear and anxiety. Some of us are in anger. Some of us are having a great time, having some time off from work. Some of us are enjoying. Some of us are recognizing the glory, the grace, and the benefit. What is it that you're seeing in this part of our journey together here as brothers and sisters of Christ? What is it that you are experiencing? Is it heaven on earth, or is it hell on earth? Are you waiting to see how God is going to help you pay your mortgage? Are you waiting to see how it's going to blow your mind that you made enough money for groceries this week? That's heaven on earth. Hell on earth is, oh my gosh, I'm mad at everybody. They better open up the country. They have to change things. Why are they doing this? Don't they care about anybody? This is a perception that brings us into a negative understanding, a blaming, a judging, and it's just not a good place to sit during a time like this. And so when I realized this part, that my experience of this time is connected to a oneness with everybody, and also connected to a choice or choices that I make individually and that we make as a collective society. So when I realized that, I thought, wait a minute, a lot of shit is going wrong in the world, and there are a lot of things that I absolutely don't have any control over. So yeah, when this shutdown happened, and when it got locked down, and I was learning about, you know, choices, and I read this, and I recognized that choices are going to be the thing that bring us to a place of connection with one another, I prayed more. And when the governor shut us down, and I kind of just shut my head down like this, and a vision came to me, and the vision was Noah's Ark. And Noah's Ark, we know the story, is when God was a little upset with the earth, and so he kind of washed it clean so we could try again. But there's a promise, and his promise is that he would never do that to us again, that we are co-creators, and that we get to have a choice. So when the vision of Noah's Ark came into my brain, of course I questioned it, and of course I defended myself in an understanding that the situation that we are experiencing right now is potentially something that we collectively have decided. And I kind of rebuked that. And I said to God in that understanding, or in that prayer, or in that meditation, I said, it's not my fault the world is falling apart. Like, it's not my fault. And I got visions that kept coming, and I saw children at the border in cages with no food, no medical, no freedom. I saw that man that got killed by, being choked because he was selling cigarettes on the side of the road. And I just saw all of these reminders of what life has become, and how anger and judgment and greed have kind of filtered into our experience. But I'm a generous person, and I try to love people, and so when I got these visions of the kids at the border, or not having food or freedoms and stuff, inside of myself, my human response was, I didn't do that. I didn't pick that. I donated to the GoFundMe page for the children, and I tried to do different things, and so that was hard for me to understand. And when I did that, I started to have a feeling come over me. And it was like this warm feeling, almost like water, like warm water, like rushing over me. And when that started to happen, I got a vision of a bucket. So I have a red bucket that I use to mop my floor. And in my vision, my response, the response that came to me when I said, this isn't my fault. I didn't make this happen. I didn't put children in the border with no food and no medical. I didn't do that. That's not my fault. So if this is a Noah's Ark experience that we collectively created as a oneness, not me personally, the whole world, all of us together as one entity, we have something to learn here. And we can find that we have something to learn here when we track our anger. And that's what my lesson was this weekend. That's what that was prompted in me when my friend asked me that question. This is how it transpired for me to get a collective understanding of what happened. So again, I read this story, and I said, well, it's not my fault that these things have happened in the world. And the response that came into my soul when I said that, in defense of my own behaviors, and in defense of me, was my red mopping bucket. And the bucket in the vision, the bucket was filled with water, and I, in the vision, was standing above the bucket with a little eyedropper of water, one that if you squeeze the eyedropper, one drop of water comes in, falls out. And so I watched. Now, let me sidetrack to that. A few months ago, my daughter and I were going down to the city for a doctor's appointment that she had. And I'm the type of person that, like, when I go down to the city, I bring as many singles, fives, tens, and 20s as I can, because there's a lot of people in the city that are hungry, or homeless people, and when I walk past them and they ask for money, I always give them the money. It's the practice that I do every time. And so this one day, Marissa and I were on our way to her doctor's appointment, and in fact, we were early for her doctor's appointment. And we had stopped at a red light, and as the light changed green and I went forward because the light changed green, just as I started to depress just a little bit on the gas, I noticed a man on the side of the road, like right there, maybe 5 feet from my car, 10 feet from my car, and I didn't see him, actually. I saw the sign, and the sign that he had said, "I'm just hungry." That's all. It said, "I'm just hungry." I think I slowed down long enough to be able to read the sign that said, "I'm just hungry." And I kept driving. So when we got about a block away at the next red light, I said to Marissa, "How did I drive past that man? How did I do that?" I said, he just has a sign that says, "I'm just hungry." And I just saw the sign, hit the gas, and I just kept going. And how did I do that? I'm not even that person. Like, why would I do that? I said to her, maybe we should turn around and I should go back and give him money. We're early. And she's like, "Yeah, but traffic, Mom. Maybe, if God wants you to give him money, we'll see him again." And that was okay, and I agreed with that, and we went to the doctor's appointment, and Marissa actually ended up staying in the hospital that day, and I had gone home to pick up some things for her, and believe it or not, on the way out of the city, I saw the man with the same sign. I was able to stop and give him money, and I felt better about that, although I couldn't remove the shame inside of me for having driven past him in the first place. So I started to, of course, ask for forgiveness for that. That's the story. Now back to the bucket. So now in my vision, in my response to me thinking that this vision coming, that this experience that we are living is for us to learn something and to grow for something and to experience something that we will all collectively recognize that we all have a hand in it. So again, I got this response inside of myself from my soul, which is the part of me connected to God, and it was me over the bucket with that eyedropper. Well, when in the vision I squeezed the eyedropper, as the drop was falling out of the eyedropper, it was me. I was the drop of water. And the drop of water was the day that I drove past that man. And as I drove past him, the drop of water fell into the bucket. The bucket was still in the beginning of the vision. But when the one drop, my drop, fell into the bucket, the whole bucket responded to the one drop. And when that happened, no, I didn't put any children physically in a cage in the border with no food or medical. But I drove past that man that day, see? And when I drove past him, some energy that came off of me, that choice, see, the choice to drive past him created an energy that the rest of energy, the thing that we all are, the one thing that we all are, the rest of energy felt my drop. And then I said, "I'm so sorry that I contributed to any energy that would create children being separated from their families with no food and no medical." And so I realized that the initial vision of the Noah's Ark wasn't something that God was doing to us. It was more something about the choices that we make every day that seem so inconsequential but are so of consequence. The things that we have the ability to just overlook. See? And it just, I'm so sorry. I'm emotional, but it really impacted me. It shifted me. And so when I read this parable, when I read this story in Matthew, and I realized it was about the choices we make in our everyday, and our thoughts, and our actions, and our deeds, and our every expression, that when he says if you clothed a random person that needed money or they were hungry and you gave them food, that you did that for Christ, that you did that for the thing that we all belong to, the collective, the kingdom of God is here. This gives us heaven on earth and not hell on earth. So it's easy to say that it's not our fault. And maybe we didn't physically take a particular, action of pulling children away from their families and putting them in a cage or something like that, but we've all put drops in the bucket. So it indicates that the choices we make have to be different. But why do we think that it's okay that we don't see everybody? And it's because anger comes. And anger makes us feel like we have some kind of right. Like we are some kind of king or some kind of judge. But we're not. We are one thing. We are sisters and brothers. We are one expression of him. And that's what we're trying to get to. So when I arrived at that part of the understanding, I was reminded of another friend of mine who shared a healing technique with me. And there's this Hawaiian prayer that is called Ho'oponopono, and it's defined in the dictionary as a coming to acceptance of our role within every single situation, especially situations that cause us to be in turmoil or cause us to have a negative emotion or cause us to step out of an emotion of love. So when I came to this part of Ho'oponopono, it helped me to understand. I've done that prayer before, and that prayer is really comprised of 4 things. And the 4 things of this prayer is: I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. And so if I use this experience and I say I have contributed a drop of water into this bucket, into this experience that we are all living right now, and let's say that one act of me driving past that man, even though the following drops of water I put in because I found the guy on the way out of the city and I gave him enough money to eat and to have a good night's sleep in a decent place. So I put good drops in. But I don't always put good drops in. And that day, initially, I didn't put a good drop in. So using Ho'oponopono, I'm sorry that I drove past that man. I want to tell him, and I did actually, please forgive me for driving past you. And I love you. And thank you for teaching me that we are all one. Thank you for carrying the burden of being the man on the side of the corner in downtown Chicago with a sign that said, "I'm just hungry," so I could learn about anger and how anger tricked me. How when I stepped into my own personal space and it became personal and it became my journey, me, not our journey. See? So I'm gonna recap with, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. If we can come to this place of our understanding of anger, now is the time. Once we recognize that we are a drop in this bucket, and we realize that we can find ourselves in this place of Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. Now we can pray for patience. Now we can find patience. Patience is how you break anger. But to get there, you have to recognize that it is a choice. See? So, here's what we talked about today. We discussed how to deal with anger. We did that by breaking anger down and talking about its trajectory within us, how anger becomes the dominant force energy within us, right? Because it becomes personal, and then we're not a contributor to that experience. We wash our hands of responsibility. We become the judge and the jury. We become the king. We become angry. So when we break anger down, we realize that anger was actually more dominant in us than love. So the energy that we chose to host is actually anger. We learned how the choices we make in our everyday life affect both a collective and a personal experience. We learned that when we accept our role in the current situation, that anger and all negative follow-up behaviors and emotions are gone. Because I can't be angry at you if I'm a contributor to this. And here's a secret for you. If you're in a situation that makes you angry, you are a contributor to it. FYI. If you're in it and it's part of your experience, you are a contributor to it. Okay? So when we accept our role in the current situation that brings about anger, and we recognize that we have some level of responsibility in that, we put a drop in that bucket, it kind of removes anger. Anger comes to a peaceful place inside of us. And when we finally accept our responsibility and our participation of that experience, we come to a peace. And when we come to a peace, we see it very clearly. And this is where Ho'oponopono comes, because this is where we say, wow, I am so sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. And thank you. So this brings us through anger, what anger does to us, how it becomes the dominant life force inside of us instead of love, and how we become the judge, the jury, the king, and how we come out of that by accepting our role, which is what Ho'oponopono is. And if we can do that, then we can meet patience. Patience is a virtue. Anger and wrath is the deadly sin. Some of us might be hosting anger. Some of us might be hosting patience. So in some of my follow-up videos, I'll talk about the deadly sins and the virtues and how they're actually their own energy and how they come into our experience and how we have the choice to participate in either side of that. So during this time, I encourage you to recognize what drops you've put in the bucket and put some better drops in if you're experiencing hell on earth. But if you're experiencing heaven on earth and you're staying close to your heart and close to that inner guidance of love, inner guidance toward love, inner guidance that said when I passed that guy, when I didn't turn around, when I said, I'll catch him later, when I drove past him initially. Let's not do stuff like that. Okay? Thanks for taking the time to watch. I know this was a lot longer than I had intended. I hope you feel the same peace that I feel after understanding all of this about anger. And I hope and wish and pray that patience becomes the energy that replaces anger. It's our choice. So let's break anger. Thanks for joining Alma Pearl Awakenings today. I love you guys. Bye.